Before the program begins, we'd like to make some acknowledgments. Secretary of State Robert Rodriguez, New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services Commissioner Jackie Bray, New York State Department of Financial Services Commissioner Adrian Harris, New York State Public Service Commissioner Rory Christian. And now, please join me in welcoming Assembly Member Catalina Cruz, State Senator Toby Ann Stavisky, State Senator Jessica Ramos, Congressmember Grace Meng, Queens Borough President Donovan Richards, and now, please join me in welcoming the 57th Governor of the great state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Good morning, good morning. So great. Well, I guess, is it actually afternoon? Okay, afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. So happy to be here, to see all of you, and have a chance to reflect on how far we've come during this extraordinary year. First of all, I want to thank Elm Corps for hosting us here. Saida Dunstan, you've done an extraordinary job during some truly tough circumstances. I want to give you a special shout out. Thank you, Saida, for all you've done. I know the senior center in particular, your main senior center, was damaged and closed for over 10 months. I kept asking about it because I knew there were seniors that need to have that sense of connection, the sense of place that they were so used to. I see a lot of nodding heads. So how does it look after 10 months? Glad to be back? All right. Also to our Borough President, who was there in an extremely troubling time a year ago as we were dealing with the aftermath of Ida. I want to thank Donovan Richards for his incredible leadership. Thank you. We'll also be hearing from our Congresswoman Grace Meng. We walked many streets together and did a lot of collective hugs of people that were just rearing with the pain of and the devastation. They could not have foreseen what they had to go through. It was so unexpected. So I want to thank Congressman Grace Meng for being there on the ground from the very beginning and being a voice for this community in the aftermath. You did an extraordinary job. Also, Senator Jessica Ramos, again, we walked the streets. You knew the people. You brought them food. You took care of them in such a profound way. I want to thank you at this one-year anniversary to also thank you for your leadership. Same with Senator Toby Stavisky. Again, we were there. We did all this, and your heart was just so filled with anguish to see what your constituents had to go through. So I want to thank you for being there in a personal way and making sure we understood their needs and took care of them. And also the same with Catalina Cruz. Thank you for your leadership during this, but also in the aftermath, and all of you for bringing to the attention the needs of individuals who are not eligible for FEMA, that we had to actually ensure that there was money to help make them whole, simply because they did not have the same documentation as another person living in the community. So we made some real differences in people's lives, and I thank you for that. Also, I do want to give a shout out to my administration. They're often the unsung heroes. They're the ones who show up, assess a situation, and then work on solving problems. And I want to start with our Secretary of State, Robert Rodriguez, who oversaw the program to get money out to the undocumented families who really had nowhere to turn, and you stood up and tried to just lift them up and let them know the resources that were available. So Secretary of State Robert Rodriguez, let's give him a round of applause. Our Superintendent of Financial Services, Adrian Harris. Once again, you don't think of all the agencies that are involved, but we needed you to step up and make sure that there was insurance coverage, that FEMA money was being spent in the proper way. So I want to thank you for that as well, Superintendent Harris. Commissioner Jackie Bray, boy, she has her hands in everything. I want to thank her for what she does all the time. We're going to be leaving here to head up north and observe the response to a wildfire that's going on in the Catskills right now. And then other times a year, she's with me during ice storms. And so we're always in the middle of disasters together. But to be in a foxhole with someone with your experience gives me a great deal of confidence. Commissioner Jackie Bray as well. Rory Christian, making sure that the utilities did the right thing, the chair of our Public Service Commission, to let them know we have high expectations when crises occur, when unexpected weather events occur. They should not be unexpected to the utilities. So get your job done. And I thank you for being the voice of our administration on behalf of all of our constituents in that space as well. And Jano Lieber, is Jano here? Jano, well, let's give him a shout out anyhow, because it is a tough thing when you're witnessing our subways flooded with raging waters, like a river, heading down the stairs and flooding them. And it's all about saving lives in the moment, but also restoring service, making sure that they're safe afterward despite being damaged. And so I want to thank Jano Lieber for all he has done as well. So these are the people who I just want to take this opportunity to applaud as well as many others we'll be recognizing in a few minutes. So this storm, Ida, was Mother Nature at her fiercest and unsparing. As we've seen too often in the state of New York, all these 100-year events or 500-year events or 1,000-year events, they seem to be occurring with more regularity. And that was supposedly a 500-year event, 11 days earlier, unprecedented flooding from Tropical Storm Henri. Every 500 years that's supposed to happen, so we were good for a while. 11 days later, we got hit with another one. So just so you know, I'm not buying that analysis anymore. I'm not buying these 100-year events. I'm saying our climate has changed. Whether we want to accept that fact or not, it all has changed. So we always have to be prepared for the very worst. It's a tough way to live, but we have to be prepared to be able to take care of people and respond quickly and literally save lives, because that's what we were called to do this time last year. But we saw a wall of water come, turning our highways into rivers. And a lot of people were watching Serena last night. Everybody watching Serena last night? That's our girl, the queen. People were watching the U.S. Open and having to flee there for their lives as the raging waters were coming there and throughout this community. So it was unprecedented. The amount of rainfall was extraordinary, something you're going to talk about for generations. And the violent winds were impossible to escape. Power outages, downed trees, falling on cars, falling on houses, billions and billions of dollars in property damage. Ida stole so much from New Yorkers. But worst of all, it stole the lives of 18 New Yorkers, 11 in Queens alone. We're here today to remember them, to honor them, to let their families know they're not forgotten. They were victims of a gut-wrenching tragedy. We mourn their loss every single day. So, in the aftermath, I went to the streets with many people here. We spoke to the families. We tried to console them. How do you console someone when they've lost a family member to something so wildly unexpected? You wake up in the morning, you think it's an ordinary day, and by the next day, your world is forever changed. So there's a lot of pain out there. It was hard. And also, the families, the individuals who did survive, everything they had amassed in their lives was gone. We went to the alley, went downstairs, saw homes where the flood waters had gone so high, the marks on the wall were shocking. Way over my head, 7 feet, 8 feet, in someone's home, literally having to break a window to escape. The stories were horrific. And when I looked out on the street and I saw the raging mud and people sitting there on street corners trying to go through the mud and find pictures of their babies and wedding pictures and maybe a birth certificate, their lives were literally washed away. And Congresswoman Meng and I saw this image that'll be with us forever. A mother and a daughter, she couldn't have been more than 5, maybe even younger, sitting on a curb in front of a wash basin filled with dirty water. And she had a little toothbrush and she was scrubbing her little sneakers to try to get the mud that was caked on so she'd have something to wear on her feet, because she was sitting there barefoot. She had one pair of sneakers and she almost lost them. Those images never leave you. It was my first week on the job as governor. I will never forget what I saw in this community at that time. Every day I think of them. And so we spent the days, the weeks, showing up, talking to people. What do you need? How can we help? It was very real. We needed water. We needed food. We needed a place to stay. Hotels. Find some place to give people a shelter over their heads. But I want to say in the midst of all this trauma and stress, I saw something extraordinary. In the face of all that devastation, we witnessed countless acts of heroism from that community. I watched people put aside their differences, roll up their sleeves, come together, step up to help their neighbors and friends and strangers. And the heroes of this community, yes, always the first responders, we honor them every single day. The firefighters, our police, our EMTs, who put their lives on the line to rescue people during unknown circumstances. And whenever there's a crisis, they always show up for us. But in New York, it's not just the men and women in uniform who step up and save lives. It's everyday heroes like Junior and Jenny Moreno from East Elmhurst. Could you raise your hands? I met them last year. Their own house was flooded, their car destroyed. They didn't sit there wallowing in self-pity saying, oh my God, this happened to me. They immediately sprung into action. And they're out there in the street, checking on their neighbors. Is that you cooking the barbecue out there too? There are barbecues going on in the street. Someone rolled out the grill, we're making hot dogs to feed people and taking care of them. They dedicated themselves to people who were hurting even more than they were. Went door to door, checking on people, helping them fill out paperwork, helping the Red Cross identify people in need. These are the people that I honor today. People like the two of them, who just truly made me so proud to be the governor of a state with people like Junior and Jenny. So thank you. We also were served by so many religious leaders who stepped up. They're the heart and soul of communities. People turn to them when they have their spiritual needs, but also their physical needs. Religious leaders like Reverend Patrick Young of First Baptist Church, mobilizing the action. Please stand up, Reverend Young, please stand up. Basic things like food and water and mattresses. You realize you don't want to sleep on the street or in your house. It's covered with mud. A mattress meant the world to people. You stepped up and met their needs, Reverend. I am grateful to have you in our state and the way you've served God, but also serve our people. So thank you. I also want to recognize the people from the building trades, the community organizations. Any labor in the house? Thank you. People like Tafidar Surav of Labor's Local 97. Would you stand up, please, Mr. Surav? Please stand up. They provided free assistance, clearing the debris, and there was so much debris. It was incredible how much was in the streets. Rebuilding homes that were destroyed in the storm. They went out above and beyond once again to help their neighbors when they needed them. And Yasli and Genaro Estrella. Did I say that right? Probably not. I'm really sorry. Estrella, okay, I'll give you another chance. From Neighborhood Housing Services. Wow, what a powerhouse you were when people needed you the most. They didn't just help people figure out the housing. They provided direct financial assistance and grants for home repairs and connected people with NYSERDA and how to get the power back on and heat pumps and all those basic things. I remember going to one street and we're bringing them food. I said, well, why aren't they able to cook in their houses? Well, there's no clean water. The power's not on. Just basic things that you take for granted every single day that we never will take for granted again. So thank you for what you and Neighborhood Housing Services did. And then there's here like Saida Dunstan, who, and everyone right here at Elmcor, you became the FEMA Command Center right here. And what you did, distributing cleaning supplies and helping seniors return to their homes and just feel that sense we're gonna be okay. That sense of normalcy. There's people looking out for you. I'm so honored for what you did every single day, but when you really stepped up a year ago and you and your team, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful. And so many small businesses, my gosh, they were hit so hard. They get slammed with the pandemic, shut down because of that, hard to find workers. And then you throw on a 500-year hurricane. To leaders like Tom Gresh and the Queen's Chamber of Commerce, I honor you. Stand up, Tom. Stand up. You provided assistance. You gave them a lifeline. You gave them hope. And every single person I've recognized represents hundreds more who did something that is profoundly simple in their minds, but to us it made all the difference in the world. And I'm here to say to all of us, you're our heroes. You're our heroes. And I know there's so much more to do. There's still individuals that are hurting. The community has suffered for far too long. We're trying to rebuild people's homes. And we also, as I mentioned, we have to be prepared for the if something like this happens again. So literally, in July, I announced our 2022 hurricane preparedness plan, because we're never going to be caught off guard. And we talked about how we're putting utilities on notice all over the state. We all watching the weather. When you start seeing that bad forecast, and I'm watching the Atlantic right now, because we are in the peak of hurricane season, you start deploying people early. You get ready. You get on the ground. Because otherwise, you're going to have to deal with me. And that's not going to be good for either one of us, because I'll take care of the people I represent. I'll make sure that you get the job done. So let's have those conversations now while the skies are sunny. So when the rains fall, there's no question that the people of the state of New York will be in very, very good hands. And that is what we're going to continue to do. So as long as there's climate change, we have to keep doing our best to fight the effect of that. We'll fight all those forces. But history will judge us and how we respond to this post-pandemic world, all those challenges that we as human beings have had to endure, how we deal with extreme weather events, like the fact that New York State had more hurricanes last year than Florida did, because daily storms are becoming a regular occurrence. But we gather on this one day, this momentous occasion, to say, remember the lives lost during this horrific weather event. 18 cherished lives gone too soon. We also pause to honor the heroism and to just to say thank you. Thank you for being there for all of us. For in the worst of times, you showed us the best of humanity, and indeed the very best of New York. So thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to bring up our Borough President, Donovan Richards, for a few reflections.
Let's give it up for our governor, who's truly been there every step of the way for our borough, and she was not lying. She literally got in the job same week the storm hit. It's literally baptism by fire. And I want to thank you for your friendship and commitment to our borough, because this is a governor who not only walks the walk in public, but it's what you do when no one is looking. And I remember fielding calls from you, what do you need? What does Queens need? And I want the borough of Queens to know that you stuck with us, you kept your word on everything you said you were going to do, so I'm forever grateful to you. Saida and Elm Corps, thank you for what you do. Black-led organization who's done great work to work with our communities through the good and bad times, building upward mobility for our communities. Thank you. It's hard to believe it's been 1 year. Still feel that pain. Remember being out on many of the blocks with my colleagues, from Grace to Catalina to Jessica, Nilly Rosick, who's not here, just seeing the pain on folks' faces. And it reminded me of my days going back to the city council of representing the Rockaways coming out of Hurricane Sandy. We'll be commemorating nearly 10 years of that devastation in a little bit, in October. You know, the holes in our hearts never go away after devastation like this. But what we do all know too well, coming out of something so traumatic, is that climate change is real. It's here to stay. We are in a state of emergency, my friends. And our borough paid for it, from Flushing to Fresh Meadows, East Elmhurst to Hollis. Entire blocks were flooded. Folks' livelihoods were impacted. Think about walking those blocks. Those seniors, immigrants who came into our borough in search of a better life, who lost everything that they had saved up. Many folks who took their life savings to purchase a home, all wiped out in one event. Over a dozen of our neighbors who died in basements alone. That pain never goes away. And this is why we are now in a period where there's a call to action. We must work to legalize basements across New York City. The worst part of this storm is coming out of this pandemic, where many of our communities were hit the hardest. Think about the healthcare workers who went to work every day, to the folks who lost their jobs, to the lives lost. There was no county hit harder than Queens County during the pandemic. And then this storm comes along. It's like a punch to the gut, just when we thought we were rebounding. I'm reminded of our resolve on a day like this. The folks in this room, our union leaders, faith leaders, community organizations, just everyday New Yorkers. My dude who barbecued did more than that. But that's what Queens is all about. As Reverend Young will tell you, faith without works is dead. And I want to thank the organizations and everyone you're saluting today, Madam Governor, because we can't do this work alone, even as government officials. But one thing I do know about Queens is that there is no storm that will ever defeat the resolve of the people of Queens County because of the people in this room. That's what we do in Queens County. We stand together. We pull each other up by the bootstraps during our most difficult days. So there's still so much work that needs to be done. And we know the climate crisis is linked to inequality. You cannot resolve the climate crisis without addressing inequity. So as we look to the future, resolving the housing issue, our transportation issues are all intertwined in moving forward. We also need to streamline our processes as governments. We think about FEMA, and FEMA, I want to thank you for being on the ground, because during Sandy, we knew how long it took to see FEMA. But I want to say they got it right this specific time. We do still need them to play a more major role in financial relief. We need to cut the red tape. And it's still hard to stomach the denial of claims of residents of Queens County as we speak. But we also know that working with partners like Congresswoman Grace Meng, that we're bringing that money home. That federal infrastructure money is going to make such a big difference in our county as we rebuild our infrastructure, both gray and green. And as the former chairman of the Environmental Protection Committee in the City Council, I worked extremely hard with my colleagues to bring $2.5 billion to Southeast Queens to build out our infrastructure. But that's not enough. We need to make sure that that money is going, that we're adding on to that pot of money, and that every part of our borough is seeing major investment in infrastructure from all levels of government. It's the way we avoid what we saw last year. We don't want to be here again. So I look forward to the continued relationship with our governor, who is helping us move Queens forward, who has not been shy at bringing her pocketbook. Every time she comes to Queens County, her pocketbook is a little lighter when she leaves. And she's really been firm in making sure she's going to support us, not just simply building back, but building back our borough better. We owe it to our residents who lost their lives, to their family members, to all of us who are rebuilding. Today we remember you, we love you, we are going to be here until every person rebuilds in this county, and I know with my partnership with my colleagues in government that Queens will come back stronger than ever. God bless you all.
Please welcome Congressmember Grace Meng.
I have to follow the governor and the borough president. Tough job. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng, and so honored and proud to represent parts of Queens in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much to Elm Corps for hosting this very meaningful event on the one-year anniversary of Hurricane Ida. I'm really proud to be a New Yorker, really proud especially today. Governor Hochul talked about a year ago and what our communities were going through. But just as a reminder, it wasn't just Ida that our leaders and our community leaders were dealing with and were battling. It was Hurricane Ida, but it was also the COVID-19 pandemic, where Queens was one of the earliest epicenters of the entire country. And we were also trying to be a refuge for the Afghanistan refugees that had come to New York. And so Queens and New York were just dealing with so much. And I'm so proud of all my colleagues in government, especially the ones who are here today, because we were literally on the ground talking to families of victims, talking to people who were devastated from this hurricane. But most of all, I want to thank our honorees today. I want to thank the everyday New Yorker whose job wasn't necessarily to take care of everyone around them, but you did it. You fought hard, and you've been fighting very hard, especially over the last few months and years, and I'm so grateful for all of your leadership and what you continue to do, often without much appreciation, so well-deserved today. Governor Hochul and her team have been a tremendous partner. Donovan is not exaggerating at all when talking about how much she's reached out publicly and privately behind the scenes. Every time something happens here in Queens, she is one of the first to call, to reach out, and most importantly, be responsive. She walked the neighborhoods and the blocks and visited the homes, went into the homes, sat on the streets with our constituents and our neighbors. And she didn't just hug them, she didn't just hold their hands. She remembered, we were there with Toby, about the little girl, the 5-year-old girl who was washing her last pair of sneakers. Governor Hochul didn't just stand there watching. Governor Hochul knelt down and helped wash her shoes and sneakers with that family. And so we're so grateful, Governor, for your leadership. President Biden, I'm very grateful to him. He came to Queens in the aftermath of Hurricane Ida. He hugged families who had been through tremendous loss through Hurricane Ida. And he saw how damaged their homes were. And we are grateful to him for caring about us right here in Queens. We are grateful to have worked with him and Governor Hochul to bring our FEMA headquarters at the time right in the heart of our borough in my congressional district at Queens College. And we can thank the federal government and we can be grateful for what they've done, but we can also be honest and we can also criticize and acknowledge what more still needs to be done. In the New York delegation, we were proud to secure $11 billion in disaster funding for the city of New York in the aftermath of the hurricane. But let's be clear, whether it's through FEMA, whether it's for claims through the city, our constituents have not been fully and adequately compensated. and they have not been treated and have not gotten the justice that they deserved. We are proud of the infrastructure money that Congress passed and President Biden signed, over $1.2 trillion, but the job is not complete until Queens gets that money. We don't need all of it. We're willing to share a little. But that money needs to go towards the infrastructure for our families and our neighborhoods right here in Queens. We are grateful to the Army Corps of Engineers who we've been working with to dredge areas like Flushing Creek, Flushing Bay, and this is ongoing maintenance that has to continue to be maintained and increased, especially in the aftermath of Hurricane Ida. I managed to work with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Majority Leader Senator Schumer to create a grant, don't tell the rest of Congress, a grant through the Army Corps that can only go towards Queens infrastructure. Donovan made me do that. Because it's about time that Queens gets the money that we deserve, because we often don't get enough. And we also are working to make sure that that infrastructure money goes towards every neighborhood and every block and every family that we visited. We can't just say we visited them in the height of their trauma and their loss. But what are we going to do after that? That is the real measure of making up for their losses and the real measure of what success will look like. And so, as we commemorate this one-year anniversary, I lost 9 constituents that day. We have been spending the day going around to their homes. Many of them their families don't even live there anymore. We have gone to their funerals. We have talked to their loved ones and their neighbors. And they know and we know that the job is not done. We mourn today and we stand with our Queens families and neighbors, but our job isn't done. We have a lot more work to do. It's continuing to make sure that all hands are on deck. We want to see improvements, we want to see infrastructure, we want our sewers and catch basins cleaned out regularly, and we will not rest until all of that is accomplished, and the threats of these flooding are not a reality anymore for the families of Queens. Thank you, Governor Hochul, as always, for being here.
Please welcome State Senator Jessica Ramos.
All right, muy buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, let me start by thanking our governor for bringing us all together. I think it's really important that we use this time to reflect, to think about our experience, and to really appreciate and highlight those who stepped up at our most difficult time, but also to acknowledge where we've fallen short and where we need to do better. Climate change really is about saving lives in our community. Our community of color, East Elmhurst, Astoria, Jackson Heights, Woodside, Corona, and so many other parts of the city are truly environmental justice communities. Just like the community in Jackson, Mississippi, just like Pakistan, all places across this great globe that are dealing with life-altering natural disasters. And we call them natural disasters because they're caused by weather directly, but really they're man-made disasters when you think of the lack of action, the lack of urgency that we've really seen in addressing these issues at both a local level and a broader global level. This is about holding fossil fuel companies, multinational companies accountable for the pollution they have brought to our earth, and really highlights the urgency that we move towards public renewables, that we move towards clean, renewable energy that must be done through good union jobs for our community. I got a phone call from the 115th precinct on the morning of September 2nd, and I saw a devastating picture of an alleyway in East Elmhurst just flooded with mud and debris all over the place, and scared children, families who didn't exactly know how to navigate this disaster. I met a woman who had lost all of her cancer medication in the flood. People, like the governor mentioned, had lost some of their most prized memories and possessions from their wedding, from their children. And it was really devastating to see homes that were so hard for working families to purchase, to save, because we know that the rent is too damn high, especially here in Queens. And so many of our working families had saved every single penny they could to buy these homes. I met a few single ladies, single women who had been able to achieve this American dream, and now saw their basements completely drowning in water, and their belongings perished, perhaps forever. And it broke my heart. It really was, when you run for office, you never expect the magnitude and the immensity of the challenges that are going to lie ahead. And though the coronavirus certainly required many of us to step up, this one was really unprecedented because there was no plan about how to navigate both city, state, and then the federal government to help our neighbors. And I'm sad to say that FEMA did not do what it said it would do. FEMA came to our neighborhood and promised up to $34,000 for our homeowners. And Ruth and a couple of others not only got $0 or very few dollars, they were asked to take out a loan from the Small Business Administration, which is not true help for anyone. At the state level, we passed the CLCPA, we've passed the Bond Act, we've been working our butts off to make sure that we are meeting the carbon emission reduction goals that we have established for our state. But we have to get that funding and those gears in motion, and we have to put our unions to work to actually make that transition a reality. And at the city level, I cannot tell you for how long my neighbors in that alleyway in East Elmhurst had been begging the city of New York to make the appropriate infrastructure upgrades, especially having to do with sewer backup. That was the reality of East Elmhurst. And by the grace of God, and luckily I had worked in city government for a few years before running for office, I knew that we were able to get a special dispensation from the Department of Health in order to declare that alleyway a community health concern, and in that way actually get DEP to do its job and upgrade that alleyway at no cost to the homeowners. That was certainly a feat within and of itself, but that's only one alleyway. I can't tell you how many alleyways in East Elmhurst and Woodside alone need these upgrades. Flushing Bay needs dredging. Flushing Bay needs attention in order to make sure that our homes in East Elmhurst cease to be flooded. It's not okay that we think that this is normal because it's been going on for so long. And I'm looking at my seniors because I know you have been dealing with flooding in your homes for such a long time. I've been hearing about it for as long as I can remember, and certainly since my days on the community board. So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of money and numbers being thrown out. You know, $6 billion in infrastructure from the federal government. There's $41 million additionally coming. There's money we allocated in the state budget. There's money that the city is putting up, and we're all wondering when we see the material change that we need in order to save our people and save our homes. You know, the issues with FEMA were so dire, I actually ended up traveling to Washington, D.C. myself with the cases from all of my neighbors and try and get heard to no avail. At the city level, every single one of my neighbors' claims was denied, despite all of the damage that they had suffered. And that, too, is a grave injustice. You know, for all of our lack of not wanting to tax billionaires and actually relying on working families like my neighbors for our tax revenue, you would think that we give them back the services that they need in order to raise the families that they're raising in our communities. I can't tell you how proud I am of my community. The community where I'm born and raised, the community where I'm raising my boys, they have tremendous heroes to look up to. Just a few blocks away, in Mainel Moreno, in Jennifer Moreno, I don't see her, Yurli Olivares as well, in Trafalgar and Percy Lujan from the Building Trades for Worker Democracy, and so many others who step up even on Labor Day. Local 79, local IBEW, Local 3, and so many others. We gave up our Labor Day last year to gut basements, as many as we could. And I know it wasn't enough, but I want to thank them, and I'm so happy that the governor is recognizing all of you, because really, as we've learned in past disasters, when we're in the most difficult of times, we should look to the people who are helping, because there are always people helping. So with that, I just want to say that there's work to do in terms of doing away with the bad faith loophole so people can actually get money from the insurance companies. They've been paying for home insurance and weren't able to reclaim much. That's a bill that I carry in the state Senate. I agree that we have to legalize basements in New York State, and the city should be responsible for mitigating flood damage and sewage backup damage that takes place in our city, and it's certainly in our city. So I just want to thank everybody and remind you all that, you know, we have a symbiotic relationship with planet Earth, and this largely comes from, you know, my indigenous roots. We don't exist in an exclusionary way from the planet. Us and planet Earth have to exist together. And it is our responsibility as stewards of this earth to take care of it, to take care of our water, to take care of our land. And I really, truly hope that we are able to do a better job together before the next storm hits. Thank you.
Please welcome State Senator Toby Ann Stavisky.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Governor, for coming to Elm Corps. This is the house that Assemblymember Jeff Aubrey built. And I remember when he worked here as a young, recent graduate. That image that you painted of what happened a year ago, and let's not forget, that was the governor's first week in office. Imagine being greeted with a catastrophe. A catastrophe. 11 people in Queens County perished. And one of those individuals was a woman who lived in my Senate district at the Fairview Co-op, Darlene. Ironically, Darlene, several months prior to that, had started working in the co-op where I live. And there are so many others. The 14-month-old baby whose future was ahead of him, suddenly cut short. But the picture of walking down Peck Avenue and that area near Casino Park, we all talked about it because it was so indelibly chiseled in our memories. I'm not going to forget it. The picture of the mother scrubbing with her little daughter, scrubbing shoes, and the governor and the congresswoman, we all tried to help, and I felt totally helpless. But outside, a couple of blocks away, was a large van from the state offering help. And those folks did not own their homes. Those in the basement apartments were renters, and they really suffered. And then we walked around the corner to the house where 3 people perished. And the governor put flowers there, and Congresswoman Grace Meng put flowers there. And then we left. But to me, the significance of that was the fact that we spoke to the people along the way, and most of them, their possessions were out on the street. The debris was out on the street, and their lives were just turned upside down. And they asked the governor, "Will you come back?" And the governor today has kept that promise. And it's the promise of help for the future, but it's a commitment also to help the people of New York State. And promises made were promises kept, and we thank you.
Please welcome Assemblymember Catalina Cruz.
Good afternoon, everyone. Governor Hochul, welcome back to Queens. I love to see that you're wearing the official Queens colors of the Mets. A year ago, we saw a clear picture of what happens when we don't properly invest in working poor communities and protecting our environment. Ida ravaged our community and took everything from so many, as well as the lives of 11 of our neighbors. Many had already endured devastation because of the pandemic and were just getting back on their feet. While some were able to turn to the federal government for help, others were left in the dark. Governor Hochul, incredibly, had literally just started her job, and she got right to work. When all of this happened, I remember calling your team, Governor, and I'm going to be eternally grateful for this support. We had this crazy idea that if the federal government wasn't going to step up for some of our undocumented neighbors, then the state could do it. And your team went right to work. And out came $27 million to help people. And it didn't matter that these people had no documents. All that you cared about was how do we help them survive? And for that, I am eternally grateful for you and your team, because we as electeds are only as good as the team that do the job with us. So thank you to you and them. You visited our streets, and most recently, just this week, you made sure that $40 million are going to make it to other neighbors, because we suffered, but the rest of the state was hit as well. And you've gone around our state to make sure that our communities are going to get the help that they need to get back on their feet. And not to mention the billions of dollars that we put in the budget this year, working together with you to tackle poverty. Because the reason why we are here is because we are poor working communities of color that have been ignored for decades. And when I say ignored, it's not just about investment, it's also the idea of showing up. And I want to highlight the fact that your predecessor and your predecessor's predecessor never came to Queens the amount of times that you did. Not just when we have fun events, but you came and you've shown up every time we're in need. But we still have a lot of work to do. As our borough president mentioned, we have to work on legalizing basements. We have to invest in infrastructure. We have to invest in environmental protection. And I am committed to going back to Albany and working together with you and your team to make sure that we do that. And I'm thankful to our colleagues. Congresswoman Mang has done a fantastic job of making sure that the president is hearing our cries for help as well. And we're thank you for that. But in all of this, we also saw angels that stepped up and helped our neighbors, simply because it was the right thing to do. And I'm honored to call many of them my friends, like Jocelyn. Thank you for all that you do and your team has done. Tom Gretsch, Saida and Reverend Young, and to see our partners in Label Local 79, as well as Junior, be recognized for their selfless work. It's an honor to be here to honor you and your work. It's well-deserved. And our neighbors, they wouldn't have been able to get back on their feet, or our seniors, if it wasn't for all of you. But what I want people to know is that these folks didn't just come to do good work now. They have been on the ground at various points in New York history, because it goes back a long way. And I was just talking to Mike about the work that Local 79 did during 9/11. Many of you were there, and of your brothers and sisters in labor cleaning up. And many of the folks honored today were the ones doing food pantries, going out to small businesses to make sure that we were giving out PPE. And so we are thankful for you. They didn't just become angels today. You guys have been at the forefront of everything our community has needed for so long. And for that, we honor you and we are thankful for you. And as you all leave here today, I want you to continue to think about how that old saying that it takes a village. We have to work hand in hand with our state, our federal, and our local electeds, and our folks in labor, as well as our neighbors, to get our community back up and running. Because there's many businesses who still have gotten denied. There's neighbors who have not received any money to make repairs. And so we're going to continue to be here for them, because while we have made some major investments in infrastructure, in our environment, that's not going to be felt probably for decades. And there's going to be much more work that we need to do. And in the meantime, I ask that you continue to support these folks, that you continue to support our people in government. And I'm a firm believer in prayer. And prayer with action goes a long way, because it can't just be about prayer. We can't just every time something bad happens in our country send prayers for everyone. We have to get to work. And we're the ones doing the work to make sure that our neighbors are going to have a better tomorrow. And so I ask that you pray for all of those of us who are making sure that tomorrow is a better day, because we're going to continue to fight really hard to make sure that you have that tomorrow. Thank you. And Governor, if you will allow me, I'll say a few words in Spanish, because I know we have some folks in the media here and some folks that speak Spanish. Para mí es un honor estar aquí al lado de la gobernadora, no solamente honrando a los miembros de nuestra comunidad que han sido los ángeles de esta tragedia. Hoy se cumple un año de la tragedia del huracán Aida, y gracias a la gobernadora, gracias a nuestra congresista, gracias a nuestros hermanos de los sindicatos, hemos podido pararnos, hemos podido ayudarle a nuestros vecinos a empezar una vida nueva, pero nos falta mucho trabajo, porque nuestro medio ambiente y la infraestructura de nuestro estado y nuestra ciudad necesitan inversiones, y vamos a seguir aquí apoyándolos a ellos y trabajando en conjunto para asegurarnos que lo que pasó hace un año no se vuelva a repetir en nuestro estado. Muchas gracias.
Please welcome back to the podium Governor Kathy Hochul.
Now we have the opportunity to honor the most incredible individuals, and they'll be recognized, called out.
Saida Dunstan, Executive Director of Elm Corps Youth and Adult Activities. Jocelyn Heino Estrella, Executive Director of Neighborhood Housing Services. Tom Gretsch, President of the Queens Chamber of Commerce. Maynell Jr. Moreno, East Elmhurst resident. Reverend Patrick Young of First Baptist Church. Tafudar Sarav, an organizer with Laborers Local 79.
I look good sitting next to you.
Should we move the
Yeah,
podium a little bit? This seems heavy. We're gonna get. All right.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah. We're non-union.
There we go.
Okay.